Hello. Today's video is about sharing settings on Salesforce, and we'll go over some use cases, some examples. Um, when I started Salesforce a few years ago, 6, 7 years ago, this was one of the things because I came from a heavy development background. This was something not very straightforward for me to understand. It took me a while to actually get it. So I hope you find this video useful. Okay, let's go straight to what we are talking about. So as you may know, Salesforce, a user needs to have a profile, right? The user doesn't need to have a role, correct? Let me open one of the slides. I think I had it. So user can be assigned to one profile, one role, which is optional, and as many permission sets. And the profile controls a user's object and field level permissions. And every user must have a profile. On top of that, if needed, permission sets can be assigned. Oops. The role influences a user's ability to view and edit individual object records through role hierarchy and sharing rules. So we'll go over these. And again, as I said, a user doesn't have to be assigned to a role to use Salesforce. So now to set a base level access, let's say in your organization you want like account to be private, right? So you would go to sharing settings, and this is how you would set up organization wide default. Before that, actually, let me read up a little bit about organization wide default preview. So it specifies default access to records, and then if you have sort of scenarios where, okay, how do I give all users, let's say, full access to view, edit, or transfer any case? So how would you do it? You set default access to public read write transfer. So let me show you how you do it. So to go to organization wide default or OWD, you search on sharing settings, click here, right? And then see this tiny edit button? They should make it bigger. Anyways, so you click on this one. Let's say you only need to care about, let's say, so you need to make your cases publicly write transfer, right? So I go back here and let's say either just cases, and you edit this one, and you can obviously the whole page opens up. Public read write is already there, but you could, if it wasn't there, you could select this one and hit save. And let's say if you want to make your account private or read only, so you click on edit again, and then account you make it, let's say, private, and then you'll have something like this, a message: opportunity access must be private when the account access is set to private. Okay, so I go, all right. Okay, when the case sharing mode is private, each case queue must have at least one member. If you're using case queues, please confirm in cases tab that each queue. Okay, I don't have anything just yet. All right. So where was I? I wanted to see opportunities, so I click. Okay, an email notification will be sent upon completion. Do you want to continue? Okay, I do want to continue. So it would take some time for Salesforce to um, recalculate those sharings. So I wanted our contract account to be private, right? Will take some time for it to show up. Okay. Now, if let's say, how do I give users to read and edit access to all accounts but prevent them from seeing and editing each other's deals? So choose public read write for accounts and private for opportunities. And if your org default is public read only or private, create sharing rules to extend access to additional users. So we'll go over sharing rules in a minute. Now, if you notice, if your org by default was public read write transfer for, let's say, all objects, you will not need any role hierarchy or any sharing rules, because everybody can access everybody else's records, right? So let me say it again. If your org wide default was public read write transfer, and it doesn't really happen in real world scenario, but I'm just saying, then you will not need role hierarchy or any sharing rules, because all the records are accessible by any users who has access to those objects via their profile or permission set, right? Okay, so let's say our organization by default, and when you scroll down this sharing settings page, you'll see these sharing rules, lead sharing rules. So when you create some, let's say, sharing rules on account, you click here, and then we'll go over this. I just wanted to show you, because earlier when I started, it's like, okay, where do I set up the rules? I didn't even know that I had to scroll all the way down. Okay, anyways, so go this one. Now let's say your OWD is either private or public read. Now, how you would open up access? Let's say your manager needs to see all the records that you own, right? So you need to set up role hierarchy so that your manager shows up in the hierarchy, and then that manager will have access to all the records of his subordinates. So let me read. Sharing records with a role hierarchy. Once you have defined your org-wide defaults, use a role hierarchy to ensure that managers can view and edit the same records that employees can. Now, users at any given role level are always able to view, edit, and report on all data owned by or shared with users below them in the hierarchy, unless an object's settings specify ignoring the hierarchies. Okay, okay, this is good. So let me show you something what it is talking about. Actually, let me read up and then I'll go to role hierarchy in Salesforce. And okay, so how would you achieve, how do you go to role hierarchy? So you just search on role, just roles, not the hierarchy, just the roles. And you'll see something like this and hit setup roles. You can click on expand. Okay, these are already given. I mean, if in your organization, you can rename them and you can add role underneath. So let's say you are, or a sales, this is, I can change sales marketing, and I want somebody underneath VP international sales. So I can say sales rep or something. Sales, just say sales, international sales. Now you can actually assign right from here. I mean, you can choose any of the options. So opportunity access, users in this role cannot access opportunities that they do not own, that are associated with accounts that they do own. Okay, so let's say there are three sales users, right? And all sales reps are working on one account, but they have three different opportunities. Everybody owns their own opportunity. So they can see the account information, but they cannot see each other's opportunity. They can only obviously work on their own opportunity. That's what it means. Users in this role can view all opportunities associated with accounts that they own, regardless of who owns the opportunity. Okay, they can view opportunity. Now, the third one is they can edit all opportunities with accounts that they do own, regardless of who owns the opportunity. So, let's say I get this select, and then case access cannot access cases that do not own. Normally, um, either I select this one. Pretty much, you don't want other sales rep to see or edit others' opportunities. So probably you'll give something like this or that, depending on business case, obviously. And then users in this role can edit all cases. So I choose this one, hit save, and there you go. So then you can actually create multiple roles depending on the business scenario. And then you can actually assign, let's say, users right from here if you want to. Right, I'm not gonna do anything just yet. Okay. So when let me go back to the role hierarchy. So let's say there are three users underneath international in this role. So VP international sales, and obviously everybody, you know, over up this hierarchy will have access to all the data, I mean, all the records um, that these people have access to. So if they have read access to account, everybody will have read access to account. If they're obviously profile, give them permission, profile and permission set. If they have access to, let's say, all opportunities, let's say, everybody can see or do pretty much whatever the users in this role can do. So you got the idea, right? That's the role hierarchy. So it opens up the access. Okay. And then, okay, we already did this one. Let's move on. Okay, now sharing records with sharing rules. So let's say I go back to the role hierarchy again. I create this international sales, right? Now let's say I'm gonna open in the list view, right? So let's say somebody from the other hierarchy, let's say customer service and support, they need to have access to accounts or the opportunities or records that belong to, let's say, this role. How do you do that? So you create sharing rules because role hierarchy is not sufficient, right? So normally, how would you do this? So the most common groups for sharing records with are public groups. Public groups, any group you have created. A public group can include users, members, pretty much is like arbitrary users or roles. They aren't really set in, let's say, in a role hierarchy or it's just different random. You want two, let's say, developers from different teams uh, want to work on like five different projects. They need to see at least. So you would create something like a public group, right? Roles to give access to the members of a role in the role hierarchy. Okay, and then you can also share with the roles and subordinates. Sharing rules extend the access specified by org-wide defaults in the role hierarchy. So sharing rules are typically based on record ownership or in some cases other criteria. So we'll see that in a minute. So I've already gone over this one. All right, so let's just see a few common scenarios here. So your company has two sales divisions, Eastern and Western. The Western sales rep want to share all account and opportunity records with their colleagues within their division. The Eastern sales division prefers to keep data private. So how would you do this? So you can choose a private org-wide default. Let's see, our default is then you are not sharing settings. Okay, so our account is private. Perfect. So you would do a private org-wide default for accounts and contacts, then create a sharing rule that gives a Western sales team read and write access to all accounts, contacts, opportunities, and cases owned by members of that role. So this is a screenshot, and we'll just do it right now. So let's say account share. So we scroll down and create a sharing role on account right here. So do account share. Right. So now based on record owner. So let's say I want roles and let's have Western here. The Western sales team. They all should see each other's, right? So whoever owns, they should share with. All these records are shared with Western sales team. So there we go. Now default accounting contract access. So let's say read write. Opportunity access read only. Cases let's say read write. Well, it is all read write. So let's just make it read write. Read write, read write, and read write, and save it. So this is our one record ownership based sharing rule. So I hit okay, take some time. Okay. All right. Let's go move. Let's see another scenario. So your company sells to many different industries. So two of your engineers need to know the details of accounts in one industry, chemicals, with a private sharing org-wide default setting for accounts. Create a public group that includes two users, Bob and Dave, the engineers for chemicals, and create an account sharing rule based on criteria that allows this group read-only access to account records in which the industry field equals chemicals. So this is how our criteria based sharing rule look like. So you create another rule name, another rule, industry equals chemicals, and then you share with a public group which Bob and Dave are member of, and then you can select the access level for account and contract and other objects, and hit save. All right, so let's the final slide I have. Let's say a user says, why I don't have access, I don't see a record. So this is how you will troubleshoot. So check if the user has permission to access to that object, right? If the user permission doesn't have access to the object, the role or OWD role hierarchy, it's not gonna change anything. So next, check the user's role who cannot see the record, and then check the owner's role, the record owner's role, and review the role hierarchy and verify these two roles are in two different branches. They should be in different one, otherwise should be able to see that record. Now you need to review the sharing rules for the object and make sure there is no rule that will grant the user access. If there is one, then obviously user can see the record. Look in public groups as well. Maybe the user just got left out of a group where there was a sharing rule. There is a sharing rule. Or does it make sense to create a new sharing rule to grant the user access? Now check both ownership based sharing rules and criteria based sharing rules. And if you're using teams, should this be user on the team for that record? Okay, so we didn't discuss account team or opportunity team in this presentation. So account teams and opportunity teams, they are a different way of accomplishing the sharings of records. Basically, so it's like you share if you create a team or add members, and then you can assign the permissions. Let's say they can have read write access to account, read access to opportunity. It's basically a different way of doing sharing. Uh, and if a manual sharing is used, the user may have lost access because the record owner changed. Okay, manual sharing. So let's say you manual sharing is when there is no commonality. Pretty much the user is not in public group, the user is not in role hierarchy in the different role altogether. It's just random, you want to share a record with somebody. In that case you would need manual sharing. So user may have lost access, so check if the manual sharing was used. The user may have lost access because the record owner changed, right? So manual shares are dropped when ownership changes. The manual share could also have been removed using the share button. If okay, another number 8, I don't think we discussed this one either. If you are using territory management, is the user missing from one of the territories? Um, this is a little different topic on its own, so we'll discuss it maybe at a later time. But then when you are managing territory in your Salesforce org, territory hierarchy, it goes along with the role hierarchy. We'll talk about this in a separate video, not today. So if you're using territory management, is the user missing from one of the territories? Or maybe the record did not get stamped with the territory where the user is a member. And in very rare scenarios, if you are doing programmatic share, and you can do it actually, there are criteria for creating the share in code. Then you review the code to understand why the user was omitted. All right, so let's see. I think this is pretty much it. Again, let me just revisit. You go to OWD by searching sharing settings, right? And sharing rules you will see when you scroll down, right? And you can create rules either based on record owner or ownership based or on criteria. And then how do you go to role hierarchy? You go to your role hierarchy, just hit roles in the search, set up roles, and this is how you will see it. The roles. You can actually have 2 or 3 different views. Show in tree view, click on expand all, see it, or sorted list view or list view. And then don't forget these troubleshooting, um, and you would be I this is pretty much it. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you in next video.